Good morning. Welcome to our worship service at the First Unitarian Church of Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm Suzanne Westbrook, a longtime member here, and I'm leading worship this morning, along with our summer musician, Ilana Katie, and our broadcast technician, James Haupt, who also happens to be our organist and pianist. Here at First Unitarian Church, we strive in loving fellowship to honor the sacred, to connect with each other, and to serve justice. We are a welcoming congregation, whatever your age, race, class, nationality, sexual orientation, or gender identity. We are delighted to have you with us this morning. Well, it'd be nice if I had the second page as opposed to the third. I think. We are worshiping as one congregation in many places. We have people here in the sanctuary, people joining us online, and the ministries of our church stretch beyond the walls of this sanctuary. If you're online, you can like this video to help others find us, and please subscribe to our channel to find more of our content. Our newsletter is the best way to stay in touch and to join our other programs. If you would like to receive our e-newsletter, please go to firstunitarian.com. Click the subscribe to our newsletter at the bottom of any page. If you are here in the sanctuary, you can visit the welcome table and sign up to receive the newsletter. I have a couple of announcements. The September 4th service has been moved to September 18th. September 4th is Ferry Beach weekend. It's also Labor Day. And so there will be no service here that day. Also, the assisted hearing devices are not working, so if you can't hear, this is the best I can do, so just move up closer. I think there might be a prayer request. Yes. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Let's join together for our call to worship number 420 in the gray hymnal. Yes, and stand if you are able. We are here to abet creation and to witness to it, to notice each other's beautiful face and complex nature, so that creation need not play to an empty house. And now it's time for our chalice lighting. My husband, Bob, will light the chalice. In the spirit of love, we light this chalice.
At least we try to light this chalice.
Please rise in body or spirit to renew our covenant, as printed in your order of service and also on your screen. In the love of truth and in the spirit of Jesus, we unite for the worship of God and the service of all. Please be seated. Let's join in the responsive reading number 505 in the gray hymnal and on your screen. We can alternate reading the paragraphs. I'll start. Let us be at peace with our bodies and our minds. Let us return to ourselves and become wholly ourselves. Evoking the presence of the great compassion, let us fill our hearts with our own compassion toward ourselves and towards all living beings. Let us pray that we ourselves with humility, with awareness of the existence of life and of the sufferings that are going on around us, let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts and on earth. Amen. So please rise and by the Spirit to sing our first hymn, the great hymnal Spirit of Life, number 123. So please join in the common prayer as printed in the insert, and we can say this one responsively as well. When the going gets tough, may I resist my first impulse to wade in, fix, explain, resolve, and restore. May I sit down instead. When the going gets tough, may I have faith that things are unfolding as they are meant to. May I remember that my life is what it is, not what I ask for. May I find the strength to bear it, the grace to accept it, the faith to embrace it. When the going gets tough, may I assume nothing. May I not take it personally. May I opt for trust over doubt, compassion over suspicion, vulnerability over vengeance. When the going gets tough, may I open my heart before I open my mouth. When the going gets tough, may I be the first to apologize. May I leave it at that. May I bend with all my being toward forgiveness. When the going gets tough, may I look for a door to step through rather than a wall to hide behind. When the going gets tough, may I turn my gaze up to the sky above my head rather than down to the mess at my feet. May I count my blessings. When the going gets tough, may I remember that I am not alone. May I be kind. When the going gets tough, may I choose love over fear every time. In our sacred time together, we share the joys and the sorrows of our church with one another. The first one expresses gratitude for the birth of my new granddaughter on Friday. The second is one of gratitude as well for our first volunteers from First U who helped at IHN this week from Liz Gustafson. And for prayers for my brother John's family. They lost their first grandchild at birth yesterday, and that is also from Liz. And I would like to add a request for prayers for our daughter-in-law who died on June 4th at the age of 34. And in addition to prayers for her to be at peace for our grandchildren and their father. John. Please continue your own thoughts and prayers in this time of silence. Of prayer and meditation, we reach out to one another in compassion as we say together the Lord's Prayer from the New Zealand Book of Prayer as printed in your order of service and on your screen. Eternal Spirit, Earth Maker, Pain Bearer, Life Giver, Source of all that is and that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God, in whom is heaven, the hallowing of your name echo through the universe. The way of your justice be followed by the peoples of the world. Your heavenly will be done by all created beings. Your commonwealth of peace and freedom sustain our hope and come on earth. With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurts we absorb from one another, forgive us. In times of temptation and test, strengthen us. From trial too great to endure, spare us. From the grip of all that is evil, free us. For you reign in the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen. Our ministries at First Unitarian Church continue to thrive because of your support. Your offering makes a difference here and in our community. The ushers will receive the morning's offering. If you are worshiping online, you can text the number on your screen or go to firstunitarian.com and click Give Online at the top of any page. I invite your generous contributions to the work of this church. The first reading is a little different than what is listed in your order of service. I changed my mind at the last minute. I changed lots of my mind at the last minute since I completely lost my sermon and the order of service Friday afternoon. So, a warning, huh? A warning to the wise. This reading is from the Buddha. The thought manifests as the word. The word manifests as the deed. The deed develops into habit, and habit hardens into character. So, watch the thought and its ways with care. Let it spring from love, born out of a concern for all beings. And now please rise as you are able to sing hymn 131 in the Gray Hymnal. I can hear when I'm not on mic. Second reading is a Cherokee legend and one of my favorite stories. An older Cherokee was teaching his grandson about life. And he said, "A fight is going on inside me. It's a terrible fight. There are two wolves. One is evil. He is anger and envy, hatred, regret, self-pity, false pride. The other wolf is good. He is joy and peace, kindness and benevolence, humility, compassion, and truth." So his grandson paused a moment and then looked up at him and said, "Grandfather, which one of the wolves will win?" And his grandfather said, "The one that I feed." So welcome once again. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. I have said those words for 38 years, almost every week here in this church. And although I've said them, rejoicing and being glad has not always been a strength for me. It was an intention, but not necessarily a strength. Some people are born to rejoicing and joy. Others of us take a rather winding and sometimes long journey to it. And this morning I'll share a little bit of my own journey with you. And along the way, I will point to the compassion as being the signpost, the practice, and the path itself to joy. The Buddha said, and the Dalai Lama has said, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. As many of you know, I'm a mindfulness teacher. I trained 20 years ago or so with the UMass group and others, and I've taught for some time. One of the things that we all need to do to become a certified mindfulness teacher is to do a 9-day intensive where we are taught and where we teach each other. So we go through the various meditations and instructions that are given over an 8-week course. So normally this is done in a retreat setting for obvious reasons. And for whatever reason, that spring, our training took place at the Castle Hotel on Route 9 in Framingham. It's a great start. What? So all of us, 30 some odd people, showed up to teach one another along with our teachers. I was leading the metta practice, loving kindness, goodwill, my favorite practice of all of the 8 weeks. So I chose it. So I was feeling good about the practice. I led it. Everybody was paying attention. I got to the end of it, and what happens at the end of it is that you ask for constructive criticism. Right? I got constructive criticism. It was appropriate. It actually rang true. As soon as I heard it, I swallowed hard. And I sat absolutely frozen. I was glad there was another practice that was being led so I could hide, because I was frozen to the seat. After I was frozen and after the next practice, I ran. And as I began to run, I realized that my vision was cloudy, my hearing was muffled, my heart was beating fast, my palms were sweating, and I was absolutely panicked to get away. I ran to my car, started the car up, drove out of the parking lot onto Route 9. Now, it's a Sunday night in Framingham, about 2000, right, the year 2000. There's nothing open on a Sunday night in Framingham. Nothing, not even a gas station. There are no bookstores for me to distract myself. There are no movies. There's nothing but me and the car. So what happened? Objectively, nothing happened. Objectively, I led a good practice. People were engaged in the practice. That's what's supposed to happen. That's why we teach. But internally, quite a bit was happening. So I am a woman with a history. And back then, 20 years ago, that narrative that kicked off in the middle of the criticism was so well practiced and so automatic that I didn't see it happen. What happened was just this small voice in the back, what? You're not perfect. You shouldn't be doing this. You can't teach this. Why don't you go do something else? So it was so well practiced, it was completely automatic. I didn't recognize it right at that moment. I recognized it when I got into the car. But at that moment that my narrative, my 60-year narrative, the minute it kicked in, I moved away from the reality of what happened to what I was thinking in my head. They were thoughts related to my own history. So I moved from what was an appropriate suggestion about my practice leading to a condemnation of myself as a person. I don't know whether any of you have done that, but it is a devastating experience. And it is so painful that, like all living beings, when we experience pain, even single-celled organisms, if you put a noxious fluid in the water that they're sitting in, they move away. So human beings with minds and arms and legs and cars can do a lot better than that. I took off down the road. So pretty soon after I got in that car, I recognized the reaction. I was becoming a mindfulness teacher. Come on. I needed to pay attention to this stuff, right? I said, stress response, great. Isn't this fun? Was the stress response related to the criticism? Not really. The stress response was related to my thought that it was important for me to be perfect, especially in public. I had wandered into territory that was so familiar to me, the territory of being perfect. So Anne Lamott says it perfectly. She says, "My mind is a bad neighborhood. I never go there alone." And she's great. I was alone. There was nobody there who was a good friend or a husband or a child. They were all home. I was really pretty alone with my thoughts, and I really did quite the job on myself. So what had happened objectively? I made a mistake, a misstep. Rather than invoking, some people who were right in front of us, the wonderful people at this Castle Hotel, who were dealing with a bunch of vegans and vegetarian meditators, right? We were not your average clientele. And we had demands from morning to night about what we were going to eat and what we were going to do. And these people catered to us for 9 days. I could have said, for the neutral person in the loving kindness meditation, I could have said, and pick one person who has served you this week and offer them your kindness. Instead, I picked the mailman. Were we getting mail at the hotel? I don't think so. So that's what, the suggestion was wonderful, but no. So in Buddha's teaching, the criticism, the constructive criticism, was the first arrow. So all of us experience arrows throughout our life, losses, painful thoughts, illness, aging, disappointments, everything, right? They all cause pain, some level of pain. Some things are big, some things are little. But I was very practiced at sending the second arrow, which is the "I'm not perfect, I'm not worthy, I shouldn't be alive" arrow. And that one came automatically. So it's enough that we have so little control as human beings that the arrows come when they will, right? But the second arrow is far worse because it's voluntary. It doesn't have to happen. So I fell into this particular kind of unkindness, right? So, actually, in our mistaken attempt as human beings to avoid pain and suffering, We send the second arrow to ourselves all the time with skill. We all have different ones. We become very practiced at our particular unkindness. But this lack of mercy was what I was running away from. I wasn't running away from the group or the teachers. I was trying to run away from myself and my lack of mercy, my lack of kindness. So right in the middle of a stress response, it's not the best time to be seeing things clearly. As I said, hearing gets muffled, vision narrows, get tunnel vision. I couldn't see anything clearly. I certainly couldn't see clearly that I had done this to myself. So the Buddha taught two things. That's what he said. He said he only taught two things. He taught suffering and the relief of suffering. The teachings of the Buddha encompass rather a lot of 45 years of teaching, but he came right down to it and just said suffering and relief of suffering. But what often causes most of the suffering in our life and the suffering we actually can avoid is our resistance to whatever shows up. I didn't like that comment I made to myself. It hurt a lot. It was a practiced hurt. And I ran away from it, which is what we do. We don't just run into a car and drive down the highway. Sometimes we turn the TV on. Sometimes we eat. Sometimes we drink alcohol, and sometimes we inject heroin, right? There are all kinds of addictions. Addictions are just our practiced human ways of running away from what we don't like. Somehow we think that choosing our own pain is better than suffering the pain of random slings and arrows. It's not. But there is another way. I didn't see it that night. I couldn't see it that night. The other way is to have compassion for the hurt that occurred, the first arrow, and to have deep compassion and kindness for ourselves in the midst of shooting the second arrow. So we have an opportunity every time we're hurt, even a little bit. We have an opportunity to practice compassion. The capacity to recognize pain and to want to relieve it is what compassion is. It's very simple. We're all born with the ability to empathize, even babies. 9-month-old babies empathize with each other. When one is hurt, the other cries. Compassion is a skill, and it needs to be built. Compassion comes pretty naturally to some of us for our own little tribe, our parents, our sisters, brothers, children, grandchildren. But it doesn't necessarily arise toward ourselves or toward strangers. It's something we actually have to cultivate. The Pali word for compassion is karuna, and translated more literally, it means a trembling of the heart in response to pain. So that's what we're seeking, is that trembling of the heart that says, there's pain here, and I wish to relieve it. The willingness to see what is true in any given moment is the first step to cultivating compassion, the willingness to actually see that something hurts. So compassion is often expressed in our lives in very simple ways. The only things we may be able to do for ourselves and for others may be to remain present, not to take off, not to run, not to run away from what we don't want to hear or don't want to see. We may not be able to take away another's pain, but we may be able to sit with them through it so that they're not alone. As our common prayer said today, may I stay, pause, remain still, not try to fix it, not try to make it go away, and certainly not try to, explain it away or run away from it. And may I resist opening my mouth. The stillness often starts here. The stillness can start with practice in our mind, extending to the mouth. In my case, it would have been the stillness to just sit through it and not run away. So as the Buddha says in our first reading, watch the thought and its ways with care. So how is this done? What's the actual practice? In a moment of tumult, in a moment of being insulted, in the moment of being in an argument, in the moment of being in physical pain, it's hard to call upon strategies that aren't automatic and that are new. So we have to train. We train our minds. We train our hearts. Compassion is a heart training. We sit, stand, lie down, or walk with compassion, with mindfulness, with attention. Just noticing whatever it is that's coming up. What's happening this moment? This moment. Because everything changes. So when we sit quietly enough, we can actually notice that what we don't like changes. Well, what do you know? Of course, what we do like changes too. We don't like that so much. But what we don't like changes, it shifts. Everything does. Nothing stays the same. But we don't see that if we're moving. So stillness is required. And mindfulness, the ability to remember to pay attention, helps us to be present, helps us to stay. It's like the puppy. It's not stay, boom, bat him. It's stay, pat him on the back, stay, stay. It's okay, stay. Tenderness, right? So we can notice the thought patterns. We notice the ones that are skillful and that bring goodness, and we notice the ones that hurt. And as we sit with whatever is hurting, we can notice the wound. And we don't need to paper it over, make it go away. We can actually practice compassion for the wound, whatever it is. I'm sorry that you're hurt. I'm sorry that this hurts. And there are phrases that when we're cultivating compassion, we can remember to say to ourselves and to others. Sometimes we can just keep them quiet to ourselves. So even if we're sitting with someone in pain, we can say them silently, or we can scream them out loud if we're alone and driving down Route 9. May I be free from pain. May I care for myself easily. May all that I see and hear and touch help me to cultivate kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. With practice, we can build the capacity for compassion to be our fallback rather than criticism, rather than rejection every time we meet pain. With practice, we'll build the capacity to see more clearly, and in that moment to apply the remedy that is most appropriate. And kindness and compassion are usually the ones that are most appropriate. So I returned to class the night of my runner. I wasn't gone very long. It's nothing to do. It's not even anything on the radio on Sunday nights. It was pretty pathetic, If there had been something to do, I would have stayed out a lot longer. But I had to go back and face the music. It took me a long time to see clearly what had happened. I was so traumatized. I stayed for the next few days, and did the training. But I was a little on edge. But the compassion practice has allowed me to recognize how often I shoot that second arrow of perfectionism. And I'm a little more able in the moment to see the hurt and to place my heart and my thoughts in a place where I can tend to that hurt. So I'd like to end with a very brief sentence from the Desert Fathers that really speaks to me and maybe to you as well, to sum up what I've been talking about. There is but one method to be still with the attention in the heart. All other things are beside the point. And so I invite you to rise for our closing hymn as you are able. Simple Gifts, number 16 in the gray hymnal. And now as we close our service, the benediction, one of my favorite parts. Go forth into the world in peace. Be of good courage. Hold fast that which is good. Render to no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the afflicted. Honor everyone. Love and serve the holy, rejoicing in the power of the Spirit forever. Amen. And now please be seated.